Imagine you are asked to visualize a red apple. You can probably see it quite clearly in your mind's eye, right? But what if I told you that for some people, this very task is impossible? For those living with a condition called aphantasia, the mental stage remains dark. They close their eyes and all they see is the underside of their eyelids. Yes, they literally can't picture anything in their minds. This intriguing phenomenon first emerged into scientific parlance in 2010, and since then has sparked a flurry of research. What's more interesting is that about 1 out of every 25 people are believed to have this condition. But what does this mean for their daily lives and their ability to function? Are there any hidden advantages or intriguing abilities that come with this lack of mental imagery? And is there a link to another condition known as severely deficient autobiographical memory? Well, it's an intriguing journey into the human mind, and I can promise you the findings will surprise you. Stay tuned. Hey there, Curiosity Explorers. Ready for another dive into the unknown? My name is Caesar, and with me is the ever-insightful Sonia. We're back to take you on another exploration of our fascinating world.
Hi, everyone. I can't wait to dive into today's topic. I guarantee it's going to be a stimulating discussion. Don't forget to follow our daily journeys into the unknown.
Absolutely, Sonia. And for those of you who are new to our podcast, don't forget to subscribe to the Curiosity Wonderland, leave your comments, and share our episodes. Your participation is what fuels this curiosity journey. So let's gear up and dive right into the heart of our topic today. So, let me paint you a picture, folks. Imagine being in a white cylinder, barely wider than your body, surrounded on all sides by what looks like a sophisticated machine the size of a small camper van. This, my friends, is what it's like to be inside an fMRI machine. Our subject, the writer of the story we're delving into, is laying there, head squeezed between cushions to keep it still. He's underground in one of the laboratories of Tokyo University's Faculty of Medicine, Hongo campus, right?
That sounds quite intense, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Now a synthetic female voice starts naming everyday objects: top hat, fire extinguisher, butterfly, camel, snowmobile, and so on. The task? Simple. Close your eyes and imagine these objects. Easy, right? Well, not for everyone.
Are you telling us there are people who can't visualize these objects in their minds?
Exactly. Our subject rates his mental image as 0 on a scale of 0 to 5, because all he sees are the dark undersides of his eyelids. No top hat, no butterfly, no snowmobile. He has what is known as aphantasia, the absence of voluntary imagination of the senses.
Whoa, that seems like such a foreign concept for those of us who can visualize normally. I can't even begin to imagine what that's like. Or, perhaps in this case, I can't not imagine what it's like.
Well put. It's indeed a fascinating journey into the human mind, don't you think? It makes you realize the diversity in our experiences and perceptions. And this is just the iceberg's tip. We'll delve deeper into this curious phenomenon known as aphantasia and its implications. Stay tuned. So our writer of the story had been aware of some peculiarities about himself his whole life. Aspects like a terrible memory, a great sense of direction, and a perceived lack of visual creativity. He never thought much about these traits, considering them just random quirks, until he came across something called aphantasia.
Oh, I see. So he didn't realize these quirks were all connected to a single phenomenon until he read about aphantasia, right?
Exactly. When he read about aphantasia, he understood that when people say, "Picture this scene in your head," they were not speaking metaphorically. Individuals can actually invoke shapes and colors in their minds. The shock of this realization was followed by a piecing together of his idiosyncrasies into a single, coherent phenomenon that fit with the scientific description of the condition.
I can imagine that must have been a massive revelation for him. It's similar to having all the puzzle pieces and not knowing what picture they form until you come across the puzzle box and suddenly everything makes sense.
Yes, and this wasn't a solitary case. Reports of individuals claiming to be without a mind's eye go back to the 1800s. Still, for a long time, such cases were ignored by the broader scientific community.
That's fascinating. So it wasn't until the 2010s that a man approached Adam Zeman, a professor of cognitive and behavioral neurology, claiming to have lost his mind's eye following heart surgery, that the condition started receiving attention?
Right you are. Siemens' research showed that this man had different brain activation patterns from other subjects when trying to imagine things. But the real surprise came when several people contacted Siemens, claiming to have had the same condition for as long as they could remember. Upon assessment, it was found that these individuals indeed seemed to have little to no ability to visualize at will. Siemens proposed to call this condition aphantasia, which literally means the absence of images in Greek. As the term aphantasia started picking up within the neuroscience community, more and more researchers began studying it. Now, we know that approximately 1 out of 25 people are considered aphantasic. That's rare, but not too rare. It's likely that each of us knows someone with this condition.
And for those of us who can visualize normally, it's hard to grasp how someone could function without the ability to imagine pictures and sounds.
Yeah, it's a puzzling experience indeed. But here's where it gets interesting. The biggest source of confusion comes from the assumption that imagination and forming mental images are the same thing, which is not the case. Individuals with aphantasia are able to imagine, but their imagination is devoid of sensory representations. The objects exist in their minds as interconnected concepts.
So it's like bullet points of facts about things instead of visual images?
Precisely. For example, when our subject reads a scene from Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, he absorbs a lot of information about the setting, the characters, the situation, all without forming a single picture in his mind. This form of imagination is more abstract, but not significantly less useful.
That's fascinating. It's like their imagination works in a different dimension.
Yes, these bullet list concepts don't just float haphazardly in nothingness. They're embodied in coherent three-dimensional structures that the person can manipulate in their mind. Like moving around the small boat in The Old Man and the Sea, sitting down next to the character Santiago, and feeling the monstrous mass of the fish floating near the vessel. This spatial awareness might be what allows him to find his way around his bedroom in darkness.
Remarkable. Being able to form spatial thoughts without the accompanying imagery sounds like a superpower in itself.
It does make you rethink the concept of imagination, doesn't it? The science is still unclear about why this happens, but some speculate that it might have something to do with a separation of these functions in and around the visual cortex. These are exciting times as we continue to explore the human mind in all its complexity. Now, you might be wondering about the nature of memories for those with aphantasia. If they can't call to mind images, smells, or sounds, how do they remember events? It's a great question, and scientists are trying to unravel this mystery as well. In 2015, researchers identified a new syndrome called severely deficient autobiographical memory, or SDAM for short. It's a condition where people lack the ability to relive past experiences in their minds.
That's interesting. So those with SDAM might not have those vivid flashbacks to past events like some of us do, right?
Right. Although SDAM is rare, a preliminary survey hints at a link with aphantasia, with potentially over half of a sample of 2,000 SDAM individuals also having aphantasia. They describe their memories as more of a summary of key facts, not a sensory reliving of the event.
That's fascinating. This reminds me of something I read about the different types of memory. Did you know that there's something called photographic memory, where people can remember things in extreme detail, almost as if they took a mental snapshot?
Yes, that's at the other end of the spectrum from aphantasia and SDAM. It's amazing how varied human memory can be. But going back to aphantasia, it turns out that this condition doesn't significantly impact their lives. Even though they can't conjure pictures, smells, or sounds, they usually have enough verbal facts and eloquence to provide a satisfying answer when visual descriptions are needed.
So it's not considered a disability then?
Correct. The consensus among researchers is that aphantasia doesn't meet the criteria to be called a disability. In fact, individuals with aphantasia are just as successful at living their lives and performing in their careers as the rest of the population. It's a testament to the amazing adaptability of the human brain. Another fascinating insight comes from a study conducted by two researchers at Sorbonne University. They found that despite aphantasics taking longer on imagery-based tasks, their accuracy was just as good as other participants.
So they're finding different ways to solve the problems.
Exactly. They're using less direct strategies. But it's not all smooth sailing. Some people who discover they have aphantasia feel a sense of loss or even blame it for issues in their lives.
Like self-esteem issues?
Yes, or even relationship problems. It can lead to a sort of self-consciousness crisis. Suddenly they wonder if their aphantasia is to blame for their struggles.
I can see how that might happen. Discovering you're different in such a fundamental way could be unsettling.
Absolutely. And it often leads to self-doubt, especially if they don't like certain things about themselves. But it's important to remember that these connections haven't been confirmed by scientific studies yet.
So it's more about perception than actual cause and effect.
Right. And the research is aiming to understand the diversity of aphantasia better. For instance, Junichi Takahashi, a psychologist at Fukushima University, has been studying different subtypes of aphantasia.
So there's not just one form of aphantasia.
Correct. It's a spectrum, just like many other conditions. The more we study it, the more we learn about the complexity and variety of human cognition. More insight comes from Takahashi and his team, who decided to go beyond the usual questionnaire methods. They administered a series of additional psychological questionnaires to the same subjects, aiming to understand the vividness of multisensory mental imagery among aphantasics.
So they were trying to work out if aphantasics could mentally replay things like voices or tastes.
Exactly. It's not just about visual imagery. They were also looking into whether aphantasics lean more towards verbally oriented or visually oriented thinking styles. They even investigated face blindness, a condition where people can't recognize faces.
That's really comprehensive. So what did they find out?
Their analysis showed that all these factors are somewhat linked, but not completely. For example, some aphantasics lack all of their mind senses, while others can imagine sounds, flavors, or other non-visual sensations. Interestingly, face blindness does occur more often among aphantasics, but it's far from being a universal trait.
So it seems like aphantasia is even more complex than we first thought.
Absolutely. But there's a lingering question. How do we know that aphantasia really exists and isn't just some form of psychological denial or a different interpretation of the same inner experience? For example, if a person claims they can't imagine a picture but can still draw one, is something different really going on in their head? It's a fascinating issue that researchers are now starting to explore with hard, objective data. What a journey we're on, diving into the inner workings of the mind. I can't help but marvel at the complexities of our brains and the myriad ways we perceive and interact with the world. What do you think, dear listeners? Are you finding this as intriguing as we are? Let's take this moment to reflect on the wonderful diversity of human cognition. And don't forget to share your thoughts. We're in this journey of discovery together. Research is increasingly showing that aphantasia isn't just an imagined condition. For example, studies have shown a strong correlation between questionnaire scores and brain scans, indicating different visualization abilities.
So this isn't just about how people perceive their own thoughts. It's something we can see physically.
Exactly. In fact, a team in Australia found a physical characteristic of aphantasics. Their pupils didn't contract when imagining bright shapes, unlike those without the condition.
That's incredible. So there's an actual physiological response that's different?
Yes, it's one of the first tangible pieces of evidence confirming aphantasia. And the research is continuing. For instance, a researcher in Japan, Tomoyasu Horikawa, is using AI to decipher the contents of the human visual cortex, and he's now focusing on aphantasia.
AI and brain scans? That's some cutting-edge stuff.
It truly is. Preliminary results suggest a difference in brain activation patterns between aphantasics and typical subjects when they imagine things. But more data is needed to confirm this. The goal is to find definitive proof of the neural differences between people with and without the condition.
It's fascinating how aphantasia is not just a curiosity, but also a window into understanding how the human brain works.
Absolutely. It's a small cornucopia of scientific insights. The more we learn, the better we understand the intricate workings of the human brain in general. The potential for this research is huge. Exploring aphantasia is opening up new ways to study other conditions as well. For instance, one researcher in Australia is studying post-traumatic stress disorder by comparing the occurrence of intrusive thoughts between aphantasics and those who can visualize.
So this could potentially help improve understanding and treatment of PTSD.
It's a possibility. Meanwhile, another researcher is using aphantasia as a window into the neural processes that create mental imagery in general. This could help shed light on our overall understanding of the mechanics of the human brain.
It's really interesting how studying a lack of something can teach us so much about the presence of it.
That's right. Discovering aphantasia as a scientific topic is like landing on a new continent. We're only just starting to map out its landscapes and size. It seems like the brain always has more surprises in store for us.
So this binary division between aphantasics and everyone else might not last forever?
Exactly. Future studies might lead to a more detailed understanding of the numerous ways a lack of visualization manifests in people and how they adapt to it. And despite these differences in how we think, it doesn't create barriers in how we communicate and connect with each other.
That's wonderfully human, isn't it? We find a way to understand each other despite our differences.
It certainly is. Learning about aphantasia can also lead to a deeper understanding of oneself. Just look at how the author of our main article discovered that he might also have another condition called severely deficient autobiographical memory and mild synesthesia after learning about his aphantasia.
So, in a way, understanding our own mental differences can lead to a form of self-discovery.
Absolutely. Understanding our brains can be a powerful step towards understanding ourselves. It's a fascinating journey. The discovery of aphantasia often sparks a sense of self-awareness and understanding. It can refine one's ability to express internal experiences to others and can even improve self-management. This is the case for the author of our main article who, after understanding his aphantasia, found that he was better equipped to choose his life's battles.
So it's not about correcting or curing aphantasia, it's about understanding and living with it.
Exactly. Aphantasia isn't a disease, so it doesn't need a cure. It's just a different way of experiencing the world. And it's worth noting that many who have aphantasia wouldn't want to remove it, even if that were possible.
They wouldn't want to change it?
That's right. This condition, among other things, has shaped them into the people they are today. They appreciate their unique perspective and wouldn't want to alter that.
So it's less about what's wrong with a person and more about what makes them who they are.
Absolutely. Aphantasia is just another facet that forms our identities. The important thing here is understanding and embracing our unique cognitive experiences. No matter how our brains work, they contribute to the rich diversity of human thought and experience.
It's a powerful thought, the myriad ways our brains function and how that shapes our individual and collective experiences. It's truly fascinating.
Today, we've journeyed through the world of aphantasia, a condition that affects 1 in 25 people, marked by the inability to voluntarily form mental images. It's a fascinating field that's revealing new insights about our brain, cognition, and personal identity. And remember, our brains are like snowflakes. No two are exactly alike.
And that's what makes us all unique and, in our own special way, extraordinary. Thank you all for joining us today on this enlightening exploration. If you've enjoyed the episode, don't forget to blast that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and share this episode with your friends.
We appreciate you taking the time to dive into these curiosities with us. Every day is a journey, and we're glad you're along for the ride.
We sure are. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and as always, keep exploring. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. This intriguing exploration came from an article titled "My Brain Doesn't Picture Things. What's Wrong with Me?" by Marco Giancotti, published on Big Think on January 11, 2024. For those interested in a deeper dive, the full URL is in the video description. That's it for now, folks. Take care.